Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Obi-Wan Kenobi, Episode 2. So, if the first episode gave us a fairly Western flavor kind of style, kind of Old West kind of approach, with mostly deserts and everything like that, within Episode 2 we get much more of an Eastern kind of flavor to it, a kind of much more like Japanese or Chinese, kind of neon sign kind of flavor. And really enjoyed the breakup of that. So we go into this episode, and we have a possible, just brief showcasing of a certain character, a Lord or a Darth, that we should probably just expect to probably be used in the very last episode. Hinting at something to just really tick people off, to just like, man, like, I want this now. Like, let's get this over with. But no, it's just a build-up to that. So, when we also go into this episode, one thing that I guess I should correct from the first episode, Flea. Flea, of course, was from the band Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I didn't know what his name was at that time, because this was, like, quickly done by me. And so evidently the guy's name is Vector Noctra. It seemed when I was to go on and watch this episode via subtitles, I had caught in that, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, because I didn't catch it before, because it was such a brief thing, that I was like, I don't know who this guy is. So, also it seemed, I'm not quite sure if I incorrectly mentioned this, the Inquisitors, I think there was to be the third sister and the fifth brother. Not quite sure if I just called them both the third brother and sister. Like, to me, it was like, okay, this doesn't really make sense. They have to number all these characters off for some bizarro reason. But there is that, if I mess that up a little bit. So, I kind of liked what they did, goofily enough, with the whole crooked fortune teller approach to being a Jedi in this episode. But this guy is honestly putting his life at risk, and the character that they actually used in this, like, scene, I was like, oh, that guy. Like, I'm like, okay. Like, evidently Disney just likes this guy for whatever reason, and we're just infusing him in here. I'm honestly hoping that they don't use him that much. I didn't really like him in Eternals. But I don't know. It's just like, hey guys, like, we gotta have a comedian just, like, plopped into these shows, and ha ha ha, somebody's gonna have comic relief to Obi-Wan's just dryadness. But other than that, I feel like this episode, it was fun. Like, it was probably too short to my liking. I would have liked there to have, like, they really could have drawn this out to be an hour of time. I kind of like how we are really trying to change it up and give us some different visuals, especially when we go on to have the bounty hunter part of this episode. We start to change it up and slice it up and give us some possible characters that were used in either comic books or kind of briefly in certain backgrounds of certain things. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was really cool. Other than that, like, there is, of course, a part in this episode where Obi-Wan and Reva are technically having a talk, and to me, it felt just like that moment between Darth and Luke within one of the Star Wars movies, where Luke is talking to Darth, and Darth is telling Luke possibly about Leia and, like, some secrets that Luke doesn't know about. And so I thought that was really cool. As well as also there is kind of like a nod to Han Solo within this episode, nod as meaning like they are to reference a planet of which that seemed to have been Han Solo's home planet within this episode. And that's all the reference of just going like, okay, cool, they reference something as. Because when you have to Google something and realize how important it is, because a lot of times I have to go on and Google every bit of freaking things while watching this episode, just to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to quickly forget whatever they say in this episode, because I'm just going to be that kind of person. Because there's so much stuff to go in and talk about, there's so much like little detailed things that Star Wars things tend to do. So, with that said, thumbs up episode. Like, I don't feel like these episodes are too slow or they're not exactly eventful or uneventful. But we'll kind of see where these episodes are to trickle down into being, where eventually I might go on and say like, okay, now we're getting to a point where like this is going far too slow, or like this show needs to do something important, which I may feel leaning in that way, but like again, I'm just still having fun with this story so far. So, considering what they gave us with Boba Fett and how fun that was, even though it was an Easter egg filled episode or show, I'm still kind of waiting for certain pens to drop within this show to be like, oh, cool, we're doing a whole episode of this. Wow, great. Because we also do have a limited series of this. So it's probably just going to be like, yeah, like, this was great and all, but, like, could have gone and done a little bit more. Anyways, so with that said, let's go into that double five. It's about that time to just go into spoilers. Spoiler time. Let's go into spoilers. Normally, I would go on and have a different approach to that, but anyways, so in the very beginning of this episode, we are to have Obi-Wan going to a planet called Dayu, and as he's leaving this transport, going on and talking to this deck officer, it seems that this deck officer is to tell Obi-Wan, as Obi-Wan is trying to search for this specific ship. The deck officer is to mention that there isn't a good way to scan much of anything. This planet is to be a fairly hidden planet, meaning that if you want to hide out somewhere, this would probably be it, the place to hide. So we go on and we have Obi-Wan, who is to make his way through Dayu, and we have it, of course, where Obi-Wan is to go on and spot a veteran clone trooper who is actually the guy who looks like Boba Fett from the Boba Fett show, because, of course, we have the veteran clone trooper who, if people do not know, that guy was every guy. Every clone trooper was that one guy. So it's kind of cool to have that Boba Fett reference of Morrison actually being in this show. So that was a kind of cool thing. But it also is to tell us that the clone army was to eventually get dissolved, and that's why we have stormtroopers who are just kind of random bits of everybody, and they're not all the same, because I guess the Empire didn't think that a clone army would make a whole lot of sense and was probably very difficult to maintain. So hence why they got rid of all the clones and decided to just randomly hire all these stormtrooper folks. Which, that is kind of a cool little thing to help us figure out the transition of it all. But I think the animated series probably helps us even more so, like mention what is to all have gone on with that. So Obi-Wan is to make his way through Dayu, and so we of course have him bump into a a girl who is to be a spice seller, a Tetha Grigg, and I believe the girl who is to play this girl is actually McGregor's daughter, Ewan's daughter. And so I thought that that was like, oh, okay, so, because it says McGregor on IMDb anyway, so I was like, okay, so that must be family related somehow or another. So, Tetha is to go on and give Obi-Wan a free sampling of this spice, and I'm like, man, this girl is just giving it away. And plus, also, we just consistently have to now add this spice into all of these Star Wars things as if it's like a thing that has always been a thing. And I'm like, really? So, like, are they just trying to pop off a bunch of Boba Fett references within this show? Because I guess they couldn't have gone and done it any other movies or whatever before. So, after we go on and we have Obi-Wan, who is to talk briefly to this spice girl, Tetha Grigg, we then have him bump into Jaco, who is to mention that, hey, if this guy needs any information or any kind of help, there seems to be a Jedi who can possibly give him that information. And Obi-Wan's like, wait a minute, like, the Jedi are all, like, gone and fallen and whatever. Like, there's... Why would anybody be advertising that they're a Jedi? Because that just seems like the most dangerous and stupid thing to do. Considering there's people hunting Jedis right now, that seems to be the most, like, dumb thing. So, we have it to where Obi-Wan is to follow Jaco to make it to this knockoff Jedi who is actually to be Kumail Nanjiani. And I was like, I didn't like Eternals, so I'm like, I've seen Nanjiani's stand up and everything like that, and so like I've seen Stuber, I've seen a bunch of stuff that he is in. I like the guy. It's just coming off of Eternals, and I'm just like, no. Like, I don't want to see this guy again so soon. Because when, like, I've seen other things that he's in, I'm just like, no, like, the wound is still fresh from Eternals being not so good of a film. So, we have Nanjiani, who, of course, is to play Haja Estri. Estre? Haja. So, Haja is to go on and have a mother and child who are to supposedly be going to Corellia, that is actually Han Solo's home planet, or where he was born. And so I was like, oh, okay, like, because I had to Google that anyways. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that's an interesting reference. So we have it to where, bizarrely, we have Haja, who is to be using all these magnets, obviously, to showcase he has these force powers to open and close these things. And we have him doing the crooked fortune teller thing of all of a sudden being on this conversation with this guy who is to tell these this family that they're going to go off to this one gate to where they can go and be protected, because I guess this woman is to have this child who is to possibly have midichlorians or is to possibly be a potential Jedi. So after we go on and have this family leave, we have Obi-Wan showing up, meeting with Haja, and so Obi-Wan is to know that this guy is a fake. He is to kind of use his powers to realize that this guy has remotes and magnets and all these kind of crooked things. And Haja's like, oh, okay, well, I guess you must be a more legitimate Jedi. And at some point, within this episode is to realize that this guy is to actually be Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it seems that Haja is to like want to come to him as a friend and say like, hey, like I'm gonna help you, like, because it's the right thing to do, which I'm assuming probably Haja might have some actual connections to legitimate Jedis or just possible other like friends of some sort, but we'll eventually see it somewhere down the road. So this of course leads Obi-Wan to make his way to some spice lab where he is to go on and have to have this mask of sorts that is to, like, I guess, protect him from getting high. So he's wearing this mask, and so he's to, like, it looks like he's pretending to be one of these workers trying to make his way through this spice lab. And then he goes on and is to bump into these spice den guards. And so one of the actual spice den guards is actually a Zabrak. A Zabrak, of course, if you guys know Darth Maul, same kind of looking character. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, we finally have a character that looks like freaking Darth Maul in this show. Because I'm like, man, like, how very rare do we have it to where, like, we see one character like, man, this guy looks really cool looking, and then we never see him ever, like, again be used in any other Star Wars thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, shouldn't there be a whole species of this character? But we just see the one outing of this one character. So we have it to where Ben doesn't have much skill as far as like combat and stuff like that right now, because normally he would often use a lot of his force powers for everything. And now, since Ben doesn't have his force powers readily available, now he actually has to punch people, and he is of course to hurt his hand because of him actually having to combat people, as well as within this episode having to use a blaster, which he normally doesn't use, and he's not that very well good at it. Very well at it. Anyways, pushing on. So we have, of course, Ben, who is to go on and ask one of the den guards, or one of the spice den guards, where Leia is, where the child is. Like, it just feels like every single show we have to have some kind of child character for Star Wars. What, like, technically we had the, like, for the Boba Fett series, we had the younger Boba Fett, and like we didn't really have much of like a child in Boba Fett besides that, but like it seems like they have to incorporate some kind of kid in every one of these shows. So we go on to have Obi, who makes his way to this room where he suspects that Leia is at, and he would be incorrect, because once he goes on and is to take down this little cloak showcasing that that this girl isn't really there, it's just some like kind of broken down droid, Obi-Wan is to all of a sudden be met with Vect, Noctra, and other guys with him. And so we have it to where Obi-Wan has to think on his feet, because of course he doesn't have much of force powers. So while Obi-Wan is bleeding, Vec is just kind of surprised that a Jedi can bleed, as if we're having the whole debate about, like, Superman versus Batman. Do you bleed? You will. Does a Jedi bleed? He will. So Vec is going on and realizing that Obi-Wan is bleeding heavily here, and so Obi-Wan is to go on and use some spice drug to eventually make all the other people around them high so Obi-Wan can escape. So we have it at one point where at Dayu, the Grand Inquisitor and the other Inquisitors are making their way there. Because, of course, they realize that Kenobi is to be within this location. Because we have it to where Reva is actually working with Vect. And so he is to spoon feed her that information. So when Kenobi is to make his way past Vect and his people, we then go on and have Kenobi who goes to retrieve Leia, which of course is to give Vect some time to let Reva know what's going on so she can make her way to Dayu to quickly try to possibly snatch or take down Obi-Wan. So we have Obi-Wan and we have Leia, who... It's kind of funny how Leia is to always make fun of her rescuers and is to always like put them down, where we go on and we have Leia who is rescued by Luke and is to say like, aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper? Where when Leia is to go on and be rescued by Kenobi, she's like, well, hey, like, where's the army? Like, where's my my father's army? Like, my Senator Bale's army? Where is it? Consistently asking that she would probably be better off with her father's army instead of this Jedi, because this guy is kind of old and beaten up, and so like, really, Leia's like, you know what, like, they sent the wrong guy. So we go on and have, as Kenobi and Leia are running off, we have them forcibly going on and doing an exchange of clothes. So we have it where the Inquisitors are to make their way there to try and grasp after Kenobi, because come to find out, the Inquisitors are so badly wanting to get to Kenobi because Vader wants him, and we find that out. So, because of course, if anybody is to want to kill Ben, it definitely is going to be Vader, and at some point in the world of Star Wars, that will probably happen. So, Episode 4. What was that? What? Huh? Padme? Anyways, so we go on and we have the Grand Inquisitor that is having Vector in his clutches as he's going to kill this person off. And Inquisitor Reva is to put out a bounty on Kenobi, knowing that he's here on this planet. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, isn't that a wrong move if they want to kind of keep this guy alive? Like, putting a bounty on him is just gonna, like, you could probably injure the guy, but still, like, maybe soften him up, have a whole chase thing where he's eventually gonna get exhausted and winded and whatever. So, but anyways, so Obi-Wan and Leia are changing their clothes to eventually kind of hide the fact that they're still eventually kind of running from these people, but now, even worse, they're running from bounty hunters. It seems that we are to all of a sudden see random bounty hunters, like a long series protocol droid and a Tashar. So, like, those are kind of very interesting looking aliens and stuff and droids and such that eventually will be kind of played into here. So we go on and have both Leia and Ben, who bump into Haja again after it seems that there is some droids and bounty hunters that are going after Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan is going to have to like hit some of them and take some of them down, and this leads to a rooftop scene where Leia's kind of holding on via this one rope, and Ben is telling her, hold on, and then eventually she falls, and he has to use his force power to have her float before she falls to her death. So we have it where Haja is to meet up with Obi-Wan to give him this cargo port key so they can go on and try to get out of here with some transport ships and stuff like that. Just try to like scamble out of here. And Haja is to come to Ben as a friend and say like, hey, like I'm on your side. So we have it to where the whole time Obi-Wan and Leia are possibly thinking that this is some kind of trap, but they have to go on and trust this guy anyways, because what other thing can they be doing right now? So we go on and we have Kenobi, who is to dispatch some of those droids and aliens that are after Kenobi, and we have Haja, who is to kick the one droid in the nuts. And so Haja is to go on and mention to Kenobi that he'll be a guy that is to distract Reva as Kenobi is to kind of race off. So Reva is to go on and find Haja and is to eventually know that this guy does not have any Jedi like powers, but it seems that Haja is to mention like, what's my bounty? Is it 1 million, 2 million? What is it? Like, what's my bounty? Like, and I'm just like, these people don't even know who you are, obviously. So we have it to where Reva is to use her force powers to get the information of where Kenobi is going to be. So now Kenobi is in this cargo port, and Reva is quickly behind, trying to track down exactly where Kenobi is. So Reva is to go on and meet Kenobi at this cargo port and is to give him this little bit of information that Darth Vader is still alive, Anakin Skywalker is still alive, and that Darth Vader is to want to kill off Kenobi, and Obi-Wan is just shaken by this news. Just, oh, how could he still be alive? I had the high ground. You are my brother, Anakin. You were supposed to. Yeah, let's not into the whole high ground thing. So Obi-Wan is to realize, like, well, I need to still freaking get out of here somehow or another, because at some point they're going to be moving all these items around with their force powers, and I'm going to need to skedaddle. And the Grand Inquisitor is to meet up with Reva, because all these Inquisitors are ticked off with Reva anyways, and really they're starting to see that Reva is to just want the bounty of Kenobi, because when the Grand Inquisitor is talking with Reva before, the Grand Inquisitor mentions, as we also see, like the fourth sister. We have the Grand Inquisitor that's mentioning that Reva is from the gutter, and it's lucky that they found her for how, like, she was to go on and like possibly be like the lowest of all the other Jedis who went on to become Sith. So we have Reva, who is now going on and having this argument with the Grand Inquisitor, who is actually also there with Reva, trying to go after Kenobi. And so Reva is to immediately think that the Grand Inquisitor is to want to take credit for finding Kenobi. And so Reva goes on and kills the Grand Inquisitor, and then by her doing that gave Kenobi all the time in the world to get a transport and get the heck out of here. To where that's how we go on and kind of leave this episode. So, with that said, I hope that I had covered technically everything. And so, but the last thing that we end up seeing in this episode is, of course, Darth Vader and his Bangta tank going on and kind of breathing in and out. I guess, like, weirdly, we just have it to where in episode 3, like, Darth was to go on and to get his Darth Vader suit, but like he was never really healed from all of that, so he had to go into this Bangta tank to go on and heal all of his wounds. So I was like, okay, like I guess that makes sense to have Darth just kind of being just kind of a guy in a tank right now. But again, I'm like, wouldn't it just be cool to actually have him on the show? Just show him actually show him in like suit and everything like that. Like, I get it that they want to go on and try to consistently like show Hayden on the show. I'm kind of hoping that there might be a flashback episode that is to give us like a number of characters, because we go on and we have it to where Kenobi, while Leia and him are in the cargo port, he ends up referencing Padme and how she had died, and how Kenobi is to realize that Leia is a lot like Padme. And I thought that that was like a really cool like thing to just kind of toss out there. And so yeah, like it's kind of cool to play with these characters, and it's fun to go on and mention all this stuff. But I think with that said, I'm going to try to get out of here so I can make this video as short as possible, because I know that this is a 40-some-odd episode, and I've gone on into almost half an hour. So I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.